All right, we're continuing with God's help the speech of the Lubavitcher Rebbe that we began a couple of days ago. Yesterday, I made a very uh, short one because I had to go to a funeral to somebody close to me. In any case, I managed to get in a few minutes and gave a very short class. But let's continue sort of where I left off. And the Rebbe here is commenting on a sentence in the Torah. And this sentence is in the Torah, in this week's Torah portion, which is called Nitzavim. And in the end of it, it says that God will return the exiles, the Jewish exiles. He's going to return all the Jewish people from wherever they are, and they're spread all over the whole world. It says, and God will return all of your Vishav, and God will return your exiles, and he'll have mercy on you, and he'll return, and he will gather you from all of the nations where he has spread you around, right? From all of the four corners of the world, all the different continents, wherever Jews happen to be, God will wake them up, and he will gather them. What do you mean gather them? And that all the Jews will want to do what it says in the Torah. It's in the essence of every Jewish soul. Every Jew wants to do all the commandments. And the Jews will hear, maybe they'll hear first, that the Holy Temple came from heaven in the land of Israel. That's what it says. It's going to come from heaven. How this is going to be, I don't know. But it says that the temple exists in real reality. It's not even spiritual. I don't exactly understand how it is. But it says that the temple exists. It's there, finished, completed, right? It's a banui v'shuchlal. It's built. This is from the Talmud. This is not just in a Kabbalah book. Mikdash Hashem konani yedecha. That the third temple will be brought to the world by God. The Rebbe brings from a Gemara and we're in Megillah that it says that the Beit HaMikdash, first of all, is going to fly to all the time the Holy Temple has not been here, so there's been a Holy Temple, a symbolic Holy Temple outside of Israel, and that's been the place where Judaism is spread out all over the world. So that's 770 Eastern Parkway. There's no other place in the world that Judaism is spread out all over the world. So 770 Eastern Parkway, then the Holy Temple is going to fly over there, and then it's going to fly to Jerusalem with all of the synagogues in the world. So, I mean, even CNN will not be able to ignore that, that. And all the people that hate the Jews will all suddenly realize, hey, maybe we made a big mistake. And let's drop this hatred. And those that don't want to drop the hatred, despite all of the evidence, so they're not going to want to live in a world, one of these goody worlds where everybody just, is honest and loving and trustworthy and, faithful and things like that. They want to live in that. So, okay, that's the enemies of the Jews will be, evaporated. Let's say, whatever, find a nice word for it. They'll all go away. But the main thing is that when all the Jews see this, that it's all done by God, so they'll all wake up and they want to do the commandments. You can't do the commandments unless there's unless all the commandments, unless in Israel. Israel is the place you do all the commandments. Outside of Israel, there's a lot of commandments you can't do, right? And especially when there's a holy temple, then there's for sure a lot of commandments which will be available for the first time in like 2,000 years. So everybody's going to go to the land of Israel. Okay, and so it says that God will return all of your exiles, and he will gather you up over there, right over there. And then it continues, is even if you're scattered to the four corners of the heavens, God will bring you all back. And so, okay, so God's going to come back. But we have a little bit of a question over here. What about God himself? What about God himself? I mean, God really cares about the Jews so much. He's going to do all these weird miracles of making the Holy Temple fly to New York and bring all the synagogues back, and the Jews are going to be gathered, the Jews of the Eretz Israel. Why does God care about this stuff? So the answer is, first of all, let's not analyze this. Why? Let's analyze another thing, that God does care. Let's forget about why he cares. The fact of the matter is God does care. And God knows that for the benefit of the world, the Jews have to be together in doing the Torah and the commandments. That's the benefit of the world. Anyone who says differently is destroying the world, or at least trying to destroy the world. Trying to destroy the world. And if you try to go against the Jews and you want to destroy the world, you're almost for sure guaranteed success. Your name will be well known. It'll be famous for generations and everyone will know you. To levels of success which have never been reached before in mankind. Everybody knows, everybody worships the religions that they made up and these people, right? But the fact of the matter is that people like destruction. People like to, make war with God. Make war with God. And the Jewish people being back in their place, everybody's going to suddenly realize they made a big mistake. They made big mistakes. Okay. And so God himself cares about all this business. And it says that God, and let's look at Rashi. We talked about this before, but here's Rashi. Look at this. What does it say? God will return all of your exiles. But it doesn't seem to say that. Here it seems to say that God will return with your exiles. If God wanted to say that he'll return the exiles, it should have said v'heshiv, that God will make return. He will make your exiles return. V'heshiv means he will make someone else do. The shav seems to indicate that God himself will do something. And the word et also can be used in Hebrew also to mean with. If it's not used to mean with, it doesn't really mean anything. It's just a helping word. It's a part of grammatics. Et. So it seems that God is saying God will return with the exiles. Huh? God's going to return. So how can God is infinite. What does it mean? God's in exile. So it says, listen, Rashi says, Rebbe Shlomo Yitzchaki, Hayala lichtov, it should have written in the Torah, if it really meant that God will bring everybody back, it should have said, v'heshiv, that God will make your exiles return. Rabboteinu Lomdev, the rabbis learn from here, Kivyachol, so to speak, Sheshechina, that God's presence, Shruya, let's say God, that God is Shruya, languishing in Israel with the Jewish people, but sorot gulotum, in the pain and the suffering of their exile. God is suffering in exile with the Jews. And when the Jewish people will be redeemed, when they'll be brought back, God declares Geula Latzmo. He how do you say, declares he what's the word? There's a good word for it. Anyway, he declares, he certifies. Yichtiv means he writes down, certifies a redemption for himself. He signs the release papers. Shehu Yeshuv, that God will return with the Jews. What do you say about that? So you thought God was infinite, right? But here he's telling you have no idea how infinite God is. You thought that infinite just means that he's not contained in any definition. He's outside of everything. He says, yeah, but I'm telling you, God is even more infinite than you think. What you said is right, but God is not limited to being unlimited. God can limit himself, and that's the whole thing of the Torah, to tell us exactly how God, so to speak, limits himself, what he wants, what he doesn't want. Because if you think that God is unlimited, say, oh, so maybe I can worship a tree. Maybe that tree is God. You say, yeah, you're right. Maybe it is, but the Torah tells us that it's not. The Torah tells you can't worship wood or people or stones. Oh, okay, that's one thing. So it says when the Jewish people are in exile, suffering exile, God is suffering also with them. And when God redeems them, so he signs the release papers for himself also, and he returns with them. Okay. Od, says Rashi. And another thing, Yesh Lomer, we can say, Shegadol Yom Kibbutz Golios. Great will be the day of the gathering of the exiles. Ubakushi, and it will be difficult for God. It'll be difficult. Ke'ilu hu atzmo, as though God himself, Sorich Liot, God has to, Ochez Biyodov, he has to hold on to each one of their hands. Ish mimakomo, each person from his place. Ke'inyan shene'amar, like it says, va'atem tilukatu, that you will be gathered up. It's a sentence in Isaiah. I think, what is it, 27? So, will be gathered up. Le'echad achad b'nei Israel. Le'achad echad b'nei Israel. One by one, the Jewish people. Huh? God's going to take every single Jew and is going to gather them up one at a time. Right? This one's going to see a program on television. This one's going to get a message from his grandmother. This one's going to have a dream. This one's going to have a whatever, is going to meet somebody on a train. Right? This one's going to have suddenly just an inspiration from above. Right? Every single Jew in a different way. This one, some guy is going to stop him on the street and put tefillin on him. There's a few months ago, I asked the person if he wanted to. I go out and ask people to put on tefillin. If he said, no way, I'm not going to put on tefillin. Go away. I said, okay, you don't want to. He said, why would people put on tefillin? It's a foolish thing. So I said, you want to know why? So he said, yes. So I said, I don't know myself. I don't know. I just figure God is doing everything for me for free. I don't do anything to deserve my eyes. And if I do all the sins in the world, he'll keep giving me everything. Here we see. So I figured I should do something for him for free. He's giving me for no reason life, so I'll do something for no reason. That's why Jewish people, see, put on tefillin. Okay, I'll put on tefillin. He started to cry. The guy started to cry. It just woke up something, his essence, Jewish soul. For minutes, I didn't say anything to make him cry, I said, you are a sinner and you will burn if you do not put on tefillin. Just think of the sins you've done. Okay, I'll put it on. It wasn't that at all. Not at all. He wasn't doing it for any bad reason, and he wasn't doing it for any good reason. Not anything, put on tefillin, you're going to have health. Put on tefillin, it's going to be good for you. You'll win the lottery, put on the... Why should you put on tefillin? I don't know. It's just God wants it. I don't know why he wants it. I don't know what you get out of it. But I know that it's a Jewish thing. I do it. He put it on, the guy cried. Okay, so here we have two things already. What does it say? Number one, God is with the Jewish people in exile. And in order to get out, he has to write down, he has to declare for himself going out of exile. And another thing, it says that the day of going out of the exile is very, very difficult. Namely what? Because God has to grab onto everybody's hand one at a time, each one in his own individual way, and to grab them out of the exile. Because you have to remember, this idea of gathering the Jews up, it doesn't mean forcing them. It doesn't mean promising them richness and this, you come to the land of Israel and everybody does. It doesn't mean that. It means just somehow or other to wake up the essence of every Jew inside of his soul. Like with that person, right? I said, why do you put on tefillin? No reason. Woke up something inside of him. He just put on those tefillin and it woke up something. It's not logical, but it woke up in him. And I didn't do it. I didn't do it. It was already there and it woke up the thing. Woke him up. It's like you turn on the lights in the room and then everybody can start working. I'm not doing the work. The people have to do it themselves. I just turned on a little light. That's what it says. God will gather each and every Jew up individually. And also in the exile of all the other nations, we find the same thing. God said, V'shavti et shivut b'nei Ammon. Those nations which are put in the place where they were supposed to be, and they were exiled by other nations like, Sancheriv scattered around. And God said, don't worry, I'll return them back also. Okay, now the Rebbe is going to comment on this. Ready? Let's go. Okay. Okay, so the Rebbe asked a few questions. Why is it? Okay, why did it say the shav and etc.? Why does it say? It should say that God will make the Jewish people return. Why does it say he'll return? That God Himself will return. Okay, so it says in Parshat. Oh, and that's right. We learned this already. God already told us that He is suffering with the Jews in exile. And it says when God saw the burning bush, He said the Jewish people are in exile. I'm in exile also. It says Imo Anochi Basar. God spoke to them from the burning bush, and God said, I'm also together with the Jews in exile. Why didn't God speak to them with a big golden palace or something? Because God says the Jewish people are like inside the thorn bush. I'm there also. Okay. So the Rebbe then asks, let's go to the next page. Right. How do we, it says that God says that I am together with the Jews, but He says I'm together with the Jews, b'tsarat galutam, in their pain of exile. Their pain of their exile, that's maybe by the burning bush, God said, I'm suffering with them. But here it doesn't say anything about suffering. Why does it, how over here, where it says Shav Hashem et Shavutcha, does it indicate that God is here? Here it says, V'shav Hashem et Shavutcha. It doesn't say that God is suffering. It doesn't say. God says, I will return with their exile. I will return myself. I will return together with them. But it doesn't say that God is suffering. Why does Rashi stress that it says that God is suffering? Okay. Says, afterwards, Rashi continues, and he says, Od, also we can say, and he comments on what Rashi said. Od, also we can say, that great is the day of the gathering of the exiles. Remember, we just learned that. Ubakushi, and it's going to be very difficult. Ke'iluhu atzmo, as though God Himself, let's make this a little bigger, here we go. Oches grabs onto the hand of each person and takes them from their place. Like it says, Atem teluktu echad achad b'nei Israel, you will be gathered together. God said, Isaiah is saying to the Jews that God is going to gather you together. Isaiah is prophesying something that happened like 2,700 years later, right? Now, he's prophesying what's going on now, when the Jews are scattered all over the world and everyone's trying to confuse them with all these other religions and these missionaries and all this. And it says all of a sudden all the Jews are going to wake up, and even and God is going to grab each one of them by the hand. And also in the exile of the other nations, we find the same thing, like it says, "V'shavti et shivut b'nei Ammon." I will return the exiles of Ammon. That's what Rashi says. Okay, obviously we have to say that seemingly this whole business is extra, right? Again, let's go back to the sentence. What does it say? It says that God will return, let's say, together with your exiles, and He'll have mercy, and He'll gather you from all the nations that you are there. What does Rashi say? Rashi says that God Himself is in exile with the Jews, and He suffers with the Jews. And when He goes out, He'll have to declare, write down a release for Himself. That's it, right? That's all. Why does Rashi have to add on these other two things? Look, and also we have to say that it's great the day of the gathering of the exile, and it's going to be very difficult for God, and He's going to grab onto each person's hand, and He's going to gather each one up from their places. Like Isaiah says, what's that got to do with what we said? Rashi is explaining the simple meaning of the Torah. He explained it. After he says, the word reason it doesn't say Hashiv, that God will make the Jews go back, but it says Shav, that God himself will return. It says, because God's going to return. Good, that's enough. What does he have to add on this thing? It's going to be very difficult. He's going to have to grab on everybody's hand individually. But seems to be Rashi put something in that's not really that relevant. Yeah, do you think that's not relevant? Here's even more not relevant. And also with the exile of the other nations, it says, I will return the exile of Ammon, right? Which that was a temporary thing back then when they were exiled in the 2,000, whatever, 4,000, 2,400 years ago. When Ammon was taken, what's that got to do with anything? Why? Okay, so the Rebbe is going to explain that Rashi is trying to tell us something very important. Okay. So, we have to understand. Sulib Vos, why is it Darf Rashi, that Rashi had to come to this second explanation? Das was Rashi benugend, sich nit, that which Rashi did not suffice. He wasn't satisfied with the first explanation where he said that God is in exile and he's going to come back with the Jews. Oh, Yesh Lomar, he has to say another thing. Maybe we can say simply from their lashon it says V'shav Hashem Elokecha, that what it says that God will return with the exiles, that God will come together. He's in exile also, and he's going to have to go out also. As much, but this implies that God is found in exile before the time that he returns with the Jews. And you might think that God's going to go out of the exile, and then whatever that means. But in any case, God will go out because God can do anything he wants, right? So God is in exile with the Jews because he decided to do it. And then God's going to go out, and then he's going to take the Jews out. He'll be outside, and he's going to pull them out. So you may think that God will go out of exile before the Jewish people go out. Nitblois was vet, not only that God will God will come here in them Yom Kibbutz Galios, B'chadei Arois, but God will just go back a little bit. God will go back a little bit in order to take the Jews out. What's going on? It doesn't work. Okay, let's do this here 1 second. God is going to go out of exile, and let's just go back in order to gather the Jews, in order to write to gather the Jews from there, all the Jews. Und der Rebbe, therefore, darfer ankommen, therefore he has to come. Rashi has to say that the Shechina Shuroya im Yisrael b'galut sorat galutam. Therefore, it's because the Jewish people, God suffers with the Jews, right? With the Jews, and God goes out first, and then he takes them out. He says, no, see, he's over nit moving, but it's not understood. Vostav Rashi ankommen to od yesh lomar. Why does he have to say, and another thing? It's not enough, just the explanation of what he said earlier, that God is with the Jews and that he goes out with the Jews. You might think that maybe he goes out first. So he says, it's not so, God is with them. Okay, he already said that. Rashi already said that. And the first thing he said that God is with the Jews and he'll go out with them, right? He'll go out with them. So so why does Rashi have to have a second one and say, great is the day of the redemption that God has to gather all the Jews one at a time? Let's see. Number 2. In Pasuk here, it says, the sentence that talks about the Geula from Eden. This sentence in the Torah, that God will gather up the Jews, is talking about Jews. Why does Rashi have to say, and also by all the other nations also, we find the same thing? What does Rashi need that for? Why does he have to bring in Ammon? That Ammon is going to go out. Very nice that they'll go out, but how is that hinted at in the sentence at all? The kasha is even greater. In order to bring a proof that the God will erase them and take out from the exile every single Jew is ganug, it would have been sufficient. with Rashi Zolbringen, he could have brought the Verter of Atem to Luktu Echad. If you want to say that God is going to personally take the Jews out, so he could have just brought the sentence, from Isaiah, without all these explanations. Great is the day of exile, and God will take them each one by their hand. Just say God will. We already said that God is going to go out with the Jews, like it says, "V'atem teluktu echad echad," that God will gather at once. Bring this sentence in the first explanation, right? Rashi brings three comments. Number one, God will return with the Jews. Number two, it's going to be very difficult. He's going to gather them all together. And number three, that also the non-Jews will also be brought to their rightful places, right? Says the Rebbe, let's forget about the third one. That's totally not understood why Rashi brings that. But the second one also doesn't have to be a second one. Just bring the sentence that he brings up from Isaiah and put it with the first one, that God will return together with all the Jews, like it says in Isaiah. As them siyum, that the end from the word Bnei Yisrael is dach darfor ken, it's known as the end of what says Al Tal Tilakatu Echad Echad Bnei Yisrael. That's what Isaiah says. So therefore you can understand, and that will mention as das was oches biyadam mamash, that God will grab onto each one on his own. Hatashayches oich zu Bnei Yisrael. We know that this has a connection to the Jewish people. So why have two explanations? Just put one commentary that God is in exile. He'll go out with all the Jews, and he'll take them one at a time. Vasazoi is oich mashma. This is implied already from it says v'shav Hashem elokecha, that God will return. Namely, what? Like in Sveitin Pirush, like it says, "But oches biyado," he'll grab onto each person's hands. V'shav, and God will come with them. I mean, if he's going to take them out and he's grabbing onto their hands, so it means that he's going to go out with them. It says, therefore, vil havaya vel is elokecha, because it says that God will be your God, and he's going to be together with you. Why does Rashi have to bring Vizak Rashi gleich if he says, and also in all the other nations, it's also going to be the same? Rashi is obviously hinting at something very important that we weren't aware of. Two more questions. What do we care the whole thing about proofs from the prophets? What are the whole second thing, the whole second explanation that he gives, that God will gather the Jews one at a time, and he brings proofs from the prophets? Why does he have to bring proofs? Just say what's going to be. Why does he have to bring a proof? Well, we don't believe Rashi. God's going to gather them up one at a time. What does Rashi mean to add the words mamish? Here, let's have a look. It says, here, it says, Tzorich liot, in order, the future redemption will be very difficult for God. God himself will have to hold on to each hand, mamish, really. What does he have to put that word in? What does it mean, really? Of course he's going to hold on to everybody's hand. What does it mean, really? Each person in his place. Okay, this is pretty amazing what the Rebbe is talking about here. And this is simple in the Bible. 5 books of Moses, right? All these people that say God has left the Jews and the Jews have a new religion and they lost the Torah and everything like that. You can say whatever you want to, but here's a certain sentence, a clear sentence that says that God is going to return everybody back. But Rashi is saying a lot more than that. Not only God is going to return all the Jews back, but God himself is going to return with them. No, that's pretty amazing. As Rashi said, I'm not finished. God is going to hold on to everybody's hand. Really, mamish. What does it mean, mamish? Really? Okay, but he's going to do it. He's going to hold on to everybody's hand. And he's going to take every single Jew and arouse every Jew's heart to go out of the exile. Huh? Okay, that's pretty weird. That's pretty amazing, you know. And it says he's also going to do the same thing to the non-Jews. Okay, what's this got to do with anything? Here we go. Why did he add the word mamish? The explanation is like this. Vedmen verstehen, we can understand, first of all, we have to understand something that we find, that we find by each one of the forefathers. This thing is not cooperating here. Okay. That we find by each one of the forefathers. That God is mitim given, that God was with them. That's what one of the big things of the forefathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, that God was with them. Now, God spoke to Bilam. God spoke to Lavan. But it wasn't the same thing as Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. God spoke to them, and God was with them. Was their beer? The explanation is that Heyos vidi hanaga, because God's conduct from above is supernatural conduct with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob was in a way from Lamayla Miatevel. It was supernatural. Biz as Allah haben, that all of them were, they saw Azer Hatzlacha, that the success comes from God. This Abraham became very rich. And Yitzchak especially was rich, as Mea Sharim, and Yaakov became very successful. But we saw that their success comes from God. They saw that God was with them all the time. They risked everything they had time and time again in order to serve God. And so it was clear to them that their successes come from God. The Rebbe is their pasuk Madgish. Therefore, the sentence says, as their Abishah, that God was with them, was with Abraham. Hagam, is the umatum, even though that God is everywhere, God is on the heavens and God is on the earth. Like it says, the heavens and the earth, I fill. God is with everybody. He's creating everybody. This means, as midzeh, with the heavens and the earth, by Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, is God was in a revealed way. Un bashitze, God saved them. Izei matzliach, as God made them successful, etc. The Zelba, the same thing is regarding the Jews themselves in the time of exile. Mitzad them was Allah zenen, that all the Jews see as God git oivzei achtung, that God gives a special attention. Kivsa achad, like it says, the Jewish people are one sheep, bein shivim zeivim, among 70 wolves, v'hi mishtameret, and nevertheless, it is protected. Take one sheep, put the sheep among 70 wolves, and that's it. You won't have any, right? Any sheep anymore. The joke they say that somebody once decided to make a display of what it's going to be in the days of the Moshiach, and everybody came and they saw one of the things in days of the Moshiach. There's going to be a wolf. The lion will be with the lamb. The lion will be with the lamb. And sure enough, there was a thing with a lion laying peacefully there with a lamb, right? The lamb is below him, and the lion is purring. You say, well, that's pretty amazing. How do you do that? It says very simply, before we open up, we give the lion a lamb to eat, and he eats a lamb, and now he's satisfied, right? Now he's satisfied. But here we have, if the lion was hungry, so the lamb wouldn't last very long. Here we have Jews among the non-Jews since Abraham, even in the time of 4,000 years ago. And in Egypt, there was no, and after that, so let's say even from the time the Jews got out of Egypt, they always had enemies. The enemies surrounded them. They were always outnumbered by their enemies. And nevertheless, here we are, 3,300 years later, 300 years, and here are the Jews. The Jews are still, right? Excuse me, Paul, I didn't see you here. So it says, look at this. Once I remember, I think I told you the story also. they haven't come around recently. I every Friday I go to this big marketplace and I set up a table and I ask people to put on tefillin. And there came to me a big group of missionaries, and they started talking. And I told them, listen, I heard all you get what you have to say, and everything you say is lies, but I haven't got any time to this. So I said, can you give us one proof that God? They said to me, can you give us one proof that God is with the Jewish people? Here, look at us. There's billions of people that believe in our religion, and we've got big, huge churches all over the world, and we're successful. What about the Jews? Where are you? What about the country of Israel? That's non-religious Jews. They've got nothing to do with God. How is it God? So I said to them, listen, want a proof? Yeah. I said, for 2,000 years, people like you have been trying to destroy Judaism in every way possible. You've got us outnumbered 1,000 to 1. And nevertheless, here we are, and there's still Jews that are holding on. And you've got more money, and you have more manpower, and you're even more intelligent. Who knows what? But here we are. We're still standing like the Jewish people. Isn't that a proof of God's existence? And they just left. They all left. They didn't have anything to say. They didn't say, but. And the fact of the matter is, if you think about it a second, here we see the Jewish people are one sheep among 70 wolves. It says wolves, and they are protected. Bavest S, this indicates as their Eberster, that God is mit the Yidden. God is with the Jews. Vimi had shown, like we had already spoken earlier about the exile in Egypt. The Erster, the first and the source of all of the exiles. God was with them. Ubedugmas zu them is euch them was kishegolim, when the Jewish people go out, also God's presence will be with them. So the Jews, when they were in Egypt, so they were slaves to the Egyptians. And the Egyptians, it says, were the most licentious nation in the world. It says the Ervas Ha'oretz, it was the most, decadent country in the world, Egypt. And why not? They could do anything they wanted to, so why not just have a good time? And they knew how to have amazing good times, maybe that like never been before. And here we have all these Jewish women that they're slaves. So you figure that, that's it. They can do anything they want to the women and to the men also. It says that they were doing everything. They were every type of pleasure that could possibly imagine. They made what's going on like in when I was in California, like small time. They knew everything that you could possibly know how to suck pleasure out of every instant of life. They knew how to do it. So how could the Jewish women be untouched by this? And amazingly, they were untouched. Amazingly, the Jewish women, they were not defiled. And they kept their names, they kept their identities. This is an amazing miracle. And it didn't go on for just 5 days or a week. They were to us, or now like the Hamas, they rape all these women. They were there for a year. They were there for 210 years. 210 years they were there. How could it possibly be? So the answer is that God is with them. And same thing is also the going out of Egypt, God is with them. We see through the exile, God is with us. Here we are. And also in the future redemption, we're going to see that God is with us. Oh, Barbad, as is verstandig understood, as this thing cannot have an ashaychas to the tochen of the sentence of Shav Hashem et Shvutcha. It says that God will bring back all of the exiles. Nit amcha. It doesn't say that God will return your people. It says God will return your exiles. Right? Shav Hashem et Shavutcha. God will return all of your exiles. It doesn't say God will return all of the people, all of the Jews. Der Lashon, this expression that God will return is et Shavutcha, together with your exile, kerum from Galus, bringing them out from exile, turning them around. This seems to indicate, as far dem geula, that before the exile, before the redemption, is God is, but granted, he's limited, kiviyachol, in the Arzus Agoyim, that God is together with the non-Jews, and he can't get out. He's in exile. It seems that he's somehow or other, God is limited. He's stuck to the Jewish people. So if so, far vagelt in far trieben, and therefore God is like suffering in, and he's driven out from his own home. God is in exile. But God is not found in the land of Israel. He's not found. He's found. Where is God found? Suffering with the Jews in exile. He can't get out, so to speak. He's in exile. If a person is in exile and he's got the key, he can go out whenever he wants. So he's not really in exile. Der inyan aber was gefindt, that which a person finds Jews in exile zu oisiten ze from the shivim sevim, that God is with them in order to protect them from the 70 nations. Meant it means gor farkert. But on the other hand, if we say, 1 second, we just finished saying that God is protecting us, right? That God is infinite and he's protecting us. And now here it's saying in the sentence that no, God is limited. God is in exile. He can't get out. He can't get out. He's so to speak, not godly anymore. He's not infinite. And now we're saying, no, God protects us. That's the opposite. How can it be together? Maybe he's there only to help the Jews. When error line is avoiding nit in Gullus. If he's there to help us, so then he's not really in exile. So is God in exile or is he not in exile? On one hand, it says in the sentence that God is in exile, whatever that means, and that he has to go out. On the other hand, we see that exile, what is exile? The last 2,000 years is exile. Right now is exile. And that God is together with us and he's limited in exile. On the other hand, we see with our eyes that God is protecting us. So he's not in exile. He's free, but he's the one that's saving us. How does it work out? Says the Rebbe, therefore, Zokt Rashi says, as main man, this bigger. Therefore, says Rashi, as da maintenance, it means an andra inyan, a different thing, that God is in exile, in the pain of their exile. As is taka kiviyachol in them engeshaft from Gullus. True, God is part of the whole, is a business of exile. Und der Rebbe darf sein der Shav Hashem Elokecha et Shavutcha. God is suffering with the Jews. God is suffering with the Jews in exile. Not that God is limited, not that God is impotent in exile. We see that he's protecting the Jews. But on the other hand, God declared there has to be exile for the Jews for whatever reason it is, right? Like the first exile there was once a so-called rabbi in Israel, and he said, this was in the Gulf War, that the Jewish people are going to be punished now because of their sins, and Saddam Hussein is going to destroy who have to be destroyed, and there's going to be a punishment, and punishments with punishments, and there's punishments. The guy talked about punishment. He got such a pleasure of talking about punishments. So the Rebbe said, God forbid. Why say a thing like that? So the Jewish people are not suffering because of their punishments, because of their sins. God declared that there has to be suffering. What's the example? Egypt. The Jewish people were in Egypt. They suffered in Egypt terribly, and they didn't do any sins. They didn't do anything. They were born in Egypt. There's times that God just makes a decree, and you can't say that you understand why the decree comes and why the decree does not come. Nevertheless, God did make a decree, and the Jews have to suffer in exile, but you should know that God is suffering also. God is suffering. And God's going to go out, and we'll talk about this more, God willing, tomorrow. Here we go. Ready?